Okay, so our chapter 3 for the course manual is here, of course. I've got the video instruction for chapter 3 here. You're gonna have a video assignment this time, it's a very poor quality video assignment, but it gets the point across. So you'll be using all the important drawing tools to complete the video assignment. And then here's the actual assignment where you will complete or you will submit the results of copying this video assignment too, right? So starting the modeling process. Oh, yes, okay. You'll be required to complete the video assignment number 1, drawing tools. This may be found under module 3, starting the modeling process. Complete the assignment as instructed in the video and post your Revit file to Canvas for grading. Okay. It's probably going to take you like 20 minutes to complete the first drawing assignment. Okay. So we'll have one of those today, we'll have one of those for next time, and then I'm going to assign what will end up being your midterm project, and we'll just start really drawing kind of walls and architectural elements in that for real with levels for the rest of your assignments till kind of midterm, late term. Okay? All right. Module, here we go. I'm gonna open this up, make sure I don't forget anything. Okay. And I think I'm just going to open up the architectural template here. Gosh, we're missing a few people today, aren't we? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. I don't think it. Maybe it's just you.
I just tried opening the template like you did, and it's still loading.
Really?
29%. It takes forever on my laptop.
Does it? Okay. Yeah.
It's
a monster program. I don't think it's terrible in terms of for being such a monster program. I think it actually functions pretty well when you get like giant models in it. But AutoCAD files are tiny, so AutoCAD was probably a lot quicker on your computer. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about our drawing tools here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to initiate the wall command, which we'll get into the specifics of the wall command in a few lectures. But you need to know how to initiate the wall command in order to use the actual drawing tools. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to talk about a lot of different settings associated with the different drawing commands that we use. I'm going to talk about object snaps in Revit today, and let's see. I'm also going to talk about how to change your object snaps. I'm going to talk about temporary dimensions. Sounds like a lot, but these will go pretty quickly. And then I think we will get to reference planes. And that's where we'll cut off in the chapter, and then next time we meet we'll talk about modification commands. Okay. Funny enough, again, I think I've said this before, right? We needed, I feel like, a lot of explanation in Revit before we could really even do anything. But to draw and then to use modification commands, it's almost like they sort of go together, but you have to have good instruction on one before the other will work. So we've got still a lot of talking to do. All right, so let's talk about our drawing commands in Revit. Okay, and I want to talk about drawing commands with regards to the wall command first. We'll learn other ways of drawing. To initiate the wall command, which is located under the architecture tab here, you can click on wall, right, and that will initiate the wall command. Okay, I'm going to hit escape here. I can also type WA, no enter, and that also initiates the wall command. All right. I'm not really worried right now about what kind of wall type we're using. We're just going to stick with whatever pops up. Okay. The idea behind tonight is not learning how to manipulate the wall command, but learning how to draw something. And the wall command could be compared to the line command in AutoCAD. Okay. So when I initiate the wall command, and I'm going to hit escape again, you'll notice that before I initiate the command, right, this is what my ribbon looks like. I've clicked on architecture, and that's where I'm at. Now when I initiate the wall command, I click, okay, and some different things pop up, all right. Immediately I am bumped into the Modify Place Wall menu here, and I have a drawing tool palette that pops up right here. And under my Modify toolbar right here, I have a lot of options that pop up, okay. So what I'm really most interested in, I'm going to be really interested in this drawing palette that pops up, and I'm also going to be interested in this offset setting right here, okay. We'll talk about this 20-foot height, location line, and chaining. We'll talk about some of those things when we get into the actual wall command in a couple of lectures. Okay. All right. Another thing I want you to notice, or I guess I said this, but I want to just point it out again. This option didn't really pop up until I initiated the wall command, right? So when I hit escape, it kind of goes away, right? And if I go to modify, those drawing tools are not there, okay? So wall, WA, and we're back. We have a lot of different ways we can draw a wall. So I've initiated the wall command, which is a 3D object in Revit, and now I have to decide what method I'm going to use to draw that wall. Am I going to use a line, a rectangle, a polygon, a circle, an arc, my nemesis, the arc, the pick, or we have another type of pick which is pick faces. So I have a lot of different ways I can go about drawing the wall, okay? By default, the line is highlighted, okay? And if I click down here and I move in the direction I want to go and I click again and I hit escape, I've just drawn a wall using the line tool, all right? I'm going to click on wall again, and I'm just doing these kind of freehand so you can watch, and then we'll go back into the specifics. I can click on rectangle. There's no shortcut key, which really sort of bothers me, right? I wish I could just type WA, wall, RE, rectangle, and then start drawing, but I can't do that in Revit. So I'm going to click on rectangle. I'm going to click to initiate the command, move in the direction I want to go, and I click and I place my rectangle, okay? Now it's allowing me to do another rectangle. These commands are continuous, right? And I want you to notice that down here, right here in my little shortened, we'll call it an instruction line, it's telling me to enter the starting point of the rectangular wall, right? So I'm getting a little hint from Revit, like, here's what you need to do next, okay? Even though I don't have a large command line like I do in Revit. So I could click, click, escape, and there's my second rectangle. Okay, I'm going to escape, escape. I'm going to initiate the wall command again. Click. Now I have an option to draw a couple of polygons, right? So I'm going to click, and again I'll go back into the specifics, but I'm just showing you how to create these. Just like AutoCAD, we have an inscribed polygon and a circumscribed polygon, okay? One is drawn based on the fact that it is drawn inside of a circle. It's inscribed into the circle. And the second is when you draw it, it's circumscribed, which means it's outside of the circle. Okay, so the polygon's drawn outside of the circle. So right now it doesn't really matter which one I draw. I'm just going to click, come down here, click again, drag, click, and there's my polygon. I don't think I've ever in practice used a polygon in Revit. Like never. But it's good to know it's there if you need it, right? Maybe if you're building homes with turrets on them or something, right? We'll get all heated talking about that subject, though. If we have a circle, we want to create a circle. I click on circle. I come down to my drawing board. I click, move my mouse in the direction I want to go, and I click again. Okay, escape, escape. Wall, WA. If I want to create an arc, I have a couple of different arcs I can create. I'm going to really talk about this one for now, and I'm going to come back to fillet arc later. I'm not going to worry about these other two just now. I would say this is by far the easiest and most used arc. Click, come down to my drawing board, click, a beginning point, click an end point, and I move my mouse until I get the radius I want. Click, escape, escape. There's my arc tool, okay? Wall, WA. I'm going to use a pick, all right? Pick is probably by far, once I I usually will begin with like a line or a rectangle when I'm drawing, and then a lot of the work that I do after my initial draw, I'll use a pick to create. Okay, so pick will, it's almost like kind of an offset and a copy in the same command. So pick will allow me to create another object, an identical copy of one object, a specific distance from the first object. Now there's a little bit more input that needs to happen before I can offset, or sorry, pick. So I initiate the pick command, then I have to specify an offset, 14 feet, enter. Now as I hover over objects, do you see I start getting a line? That line is 14 feet off of that original object that I'm touching. Okay, I can offset to the outside of objects. I can offset when I move my mouse inside. Did you see what happened there? On the outside, it goes there. On the inside, it goes there. Okay, so I can click and pick, click and pick, click and pick. Okay. All right. So those are kind of the basic drawing tools I want to talk about today, right? So looks fairly simple, but how do we draw these dimensionally, right? How do I select them? How do I alter them if I draw them and then they're not the correct dimension, right? Let's talk about that. I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to delete them. Delete. Okay. So let's start over. I'm going to use the line command, and I just want to point out a few things as I draw a line. Okay. I'm going to click on wall. I'm going to make sure that line is initiated here, and I want to draw a line, but I want to create a dimensional line, meaning I want it to be 14 feet long. Okay. So I'm going to click to initiate where I want that line to begin, and I'm going to move in the direction I want it to proceed in, right? Something you're going to notice here, and AutoCAD is getting really good at this, but I think Revit kind of had the market on it first, was that you're going to see some dynamic object snaps happening, right? So as I move my cursor, without doing anything else, you notice that I have that blue dimension that says 26 foot 6, and I have that other blue angular dimension that says 45 degrees, right? Which I don't mind in Revit, but when I use dynamic input in AutoCAD, it drives me crazy for whatever reason, right? But I get sort of a dynamic measuring system going on here, okay, which is really nice in Revit. If I want my dimension to be 14 feet, I'm going to type 14. Now, here's the thing about Revit. Here's the difference, the main difference between AutoCAD and Revit and input, okay? In Revit, the default unit is the foot. In AutoCAD, the default unit is the inch. What does that mean? It means that if I just type 14 in Revit, it means 14 feet, not 14 inches. So it's something you kind of have to get used to, right? That first number that I type in is going to be feet. It's not going to be inches, okay? So if I want my line to be 14 feet, I type 14 and I would hit enter. If I want it to be 14 foot 6 inches, okay, I would put a space, which again is a no-no in AutoCAD because what happens when you hit enter? It finalizes the command, right? So everybody's always like afraid to hit enter in Revit. But if I don't hit enter, I can't then put in my increment, right? 14 foot 6, and if I want to add an inch increment, another space and a half. I don't have to enter any qualifying dimensional marks. I don't have to put a foot mark. I don't have to put an inch mark. I just have to put them in the correct order, and I have to space them apart. So if I hit enter right now, that line is 14 foot 6.5 inches. Okay. I'm going to move my cursor this way. Let's do 49 foot 8 1/4 inch. Right? Again, the first number is always feet. The second number is always inches. That third number I have is an increment of an inch. Okay. If I wanted to, I could type 8.5 inches. Right? That's kind of what I like to do in AutoCAD. I like to use decimals. I feel like it's quicker for me. So I'll type 49 foot 8.5 inches. Enter. Works out great. Okay. Now some things I want you to notice as I draw these dimensional lines, right? You're going to notice that the second I draw them, I get those blue dimensions again. But immediately when I move my mouse, they go away, right? those blue dimensions, they're called temporary dimensions, all right? And temporary dimensions are just a lot like dynamic input in AutoCAD, where they sort of help you visualize your draw. If I click on that line again, you're going to notice that my temporary dimension pops back up, right? I do want you to notice where it's measuring from. So it's measuring from the midpoint on this end. Okay, so when you're looking at the dimension, you just have to sort of realize kind of where it's locating, right? The dimension that it pulls. But if I select the object again, I do get a dimension here. Okay. Now, I'm going to tell you something about Revit that's very much different than AutoCAD. In Revit, when I draw something, okay, and I generally try and get it correct, but in Revit, I draw something and I get it as close to whatever I want it to be as possible. But most of the time when I draw something for the first time, it's not always correct. Sounds kind of weird, right? Because when I draw in AutoCAD, I want to get it that precise increment the first time, right? But the whole idea behind Revit is and the name, before it was Revit, it was Revise It, right? Is that you place something, you get it generally where it needs to be, and then you revise it to be correct. It's the whole kind of workflow through Revit. So I'll bring this up again and point out where I do it, right? But a lot of times I'll draw a line and I'll try and get it as correct as I can, then I revise it, okay? And a lot of this stuff that goes on here, like these temporary dimensions, these are called temporary dimensions, those allow you to do that, okay? You can't do a lot of the stuff in AutoCAD to revise like you can in Revit. So if I had drawn this line here and it was the incorrect length in Revit, or sorry, in AutoCAD, I would have had to use the dreaded stretch command, right, to make it the right size. When it was just easier probably to draw it the right size in the first place, okay? But in Revit, if I click on it and I click on that dimension, I can change the length of it. I could type in 30 foot, enter, and it shortens it, okay? I could click on this temporary dimension that pops up, and I could type in 17 foot, enter, right? And it changes it. I could go back here and type 35 foot, enter, and it changes it.
Do you have to be in the wall command to do that?
Nope, nope. I can just highlight that wall and my temporary dimensions pop up. So it makes it really easy for me to draw something, get it generally the way I want it to be, and then revise it after I'm done, okay? All of the geometry that you generate, geometry meaning like walls, right? Even doors and windows, they will activate temporary dimensions, okay? So what happens when I have a temporary dimension, I really like it and I don't want it to move, right? Or I want to actually put a dimension there. There's this little symbol below your temporary dimension line, and if I click on it, it says, make this temporary dimension permanent. Click. Okay, so I can make that temporary dimension permanent by clicking on that little symbol below it. Not to say I can't delete it, right? Get rid of it if I don't need it. But for purposes of drawing and making sure things are the right size, it's pretty handy, right? To be able to pull a dimension that quickly without setting up a dimension style, without changing an annotative height, right? It's just correct, and it's really nice. All right, so I'm gonna initiate the wall command again. Let's create a rectangle now, okay? So I'm gonna click on rectangle. Rectangle, again, is fairly easy to draw, you saw, and if you didn't see, you're going to notice down here it says enter the starting point of the rectangular wall. Okay, well, you probably already noticed that I've got some object snaps happening, right? I have an extension snap that's saying, hey, if you click now, that's going to line up with that wall above, right? So we're seeing some what we call object snaps or drawing aids that help us align things or allow us to draw objects specifically on points of other objects, okay? I'll point those out as I see them for now, and then I'll point out even more, but we have extension here. Great. So if I click, I move in the direction I want to go, right? Here, it's a little bit harder. Whoops, it's a little bit harder to get kind of that perfect dimension by typing something in because I have two dimensions now that I have to worry about, right? So a rectangle is going to be more likely to be revised after I draw it than probably a line. Although one thing that is really nice about Revit that is slightly more difficult in AutoCAD is that these dimensions, they snap fairly cleanly to even increments, right? So in AutoCAD, if I get a snap, it doesn't care what increment. It could be, 3 foot 8 and 9/16 or whatever, right? Here, I snap and you see it's snapping to 12 foot, 12 foot 6, 12, 13 foot. If I zoom in closer, the increments get smaller. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. The further out I'm zoomed, the bigger the jumps I get. The more I zoom in, the smaller the jumps I get in increment. Okay. But I don't, honestly, when I draft, I don't really care. I kind of get my rectangle the size I want it to be. I click, and then I'm going to use my temporary dimensions to make it the size I want it. So I click on one wall. Let's make that 20 foot. I click on this wall. Let's make that 50 foot. And there's my rectangle.
Is there a way to tell that you want to make one, so stretch both walls?
Right.
Is there a way to tell us, I only want to stretch this wall?
Well, it only did stretch that wall. So what happened here, let me undo that, is when I select that wall, Revit sort of assumes that's the one that I want to move. So if I type in 20 foot, enter, it moves it up, that 2 foot. So it's,
but it moved it, so.
It doesn't do it like
Yeah,
equally.
So you can't pick one, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it doesn't do it equally. You pick one, it moves the one. If you pick the other, it moves the other. So if I wanted to do an even space, like I wanted to add a foot here and a foot down here, I'd pick that and I would do 19. Yep, I'd split the difference. Pick that, 20, and it would split the difference. There's some oddities like this in Revit. This is the kind of stuff that I hate, right? I'm like, why can't we just make it equal on both sides, Anyway.
Can you, offsets, basically make it so, if you wanted to have it be 20 feet on this end, 25 feet on this end, at an angle, can you do that? Redraw it.
You'd have to use lines, like the line tool to make it uneven. Yeah. So a rectangle is going to either be a rectangle or a square. You can't make one side longer than the other.
Yeah, so we're in a rectangle. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. Yep. So with the line tool, right, I could take this and I could even just drag it up and it goes like that. That's what you're talking about, right?
Had you drawn that rectangle, quote unquote, with lines, it would be okay.
Yeah, I could do whatever I wanted. Yep. All right. So I've drawn my rectangle, right? I can use the visual indicators, right? Wall, rectangle. I can use the visual indicators to sort of help me draw it, right? You'll notice that extension object snap is popping up, or I can click and then get it revise it to what I want it to be, right? 21 foot. And I click on this and we'll make it 30 foot, enter, there we go, okay? We'll get into how to change this later when we talk about the wall command more, but you're probably wondering, well, why does it always go to the wall center line, right? Maybe I want the outside dimension to be 20 feet, not, center line to center line. It really depends on how your wall is set, where the dimensions are going to pull from. So this wall right here, if you notice over here in the properties, the location line of that wall is its center line, okay? If I had drawn it with a different location line, I would get different results, okay? So things like core center line, finish face, exterior, finish face interior, core face exterior, core face interior, right? So I have a lot of different ways to draw that wall. All right, so we have lines, okay, we have rectangles. Next thing we have are polygons, which I'll go over quickly because I don't think I've ever used polygon to generate anything in Revit. But a polygon is very similar to a circle, so it's useful to figure this out, right? But a polygon is, you're going to use a center point and a radius to define it, okay? In addition to that, a polygon has another input, how many sides you want to have. So if I did, 3 sides, enter. Oh, it's not entering. Hopefully there we go. Okay, I need to click first. If I would have clicked first and then it entered 3, it would have not wanted to change. So want to do the sides first. But 3 sides is a triangle, right? So you're seeing it's giving me a visual of that inscribed polygon, right? and I need to specify a center point and a radius for these polygons. So if I want the radius to be 12 feet with a diameter of 24 feet, I would type 12, enter, and there you go, right? So the radius was from the center point of the triangle to the outer edge, okay? Let me do that one more time. I'm going to click on polygon again. Let's do 10 sides, okay? I'm going to come over here, click the center point, click, and maybe we make it 10 foot, 20 foot diameter. There you go, okay? Now these objects, right, when I drew my lines separate, they're still separate pieces of wall, okay? When I've drawn my rectangle, you know what, maybe that's not true. I think I lied. I can count that up. They're all separate pieces, okay? I just can't draw it different, but they separate after. But I think I just lost my train of thought with that comment. Well, anyway, I'm sure it'll come back to me. Here are my polygons. Okay, so how do I alter my polygons? How do I make it a different radius, right? I'm going to click on one object there. And it's a 20-foot radius, but it was from center line. This was showing from center line to center line here. I'm going to click on my dimension. Let's make it 30 feet. Ooh, didn't like that very much, did it? Let's do 20 foot. Brings that out. Oh, it's not working very well. Hold on a second. That just kind of makes it, see, this is probably why I never use polygons, right? It just makes it irregular and weird. So it looks like if I want to create a brand new polygon with kind of a pure radius, I just have to draw a new one, right? Likely the same thing here, which is probably why I don't use polygons. Okay. A circle doesn't act like that. I'm going to click on wall here. I'm going to click on circle. Circle functions like a polygon, but it's going to be a pure circle where I click a midpoint, move in the direction I want to go, you know, which is equal all around, obviously. Type in a radius, 15 foot, 6 inches, enter, and there's my 15 foot, 6 inch radius circle. Let's change that to 20, and there's my 20 foot radius circle. Let's change that to 10. There we go. Okay. All right. So one thing that I sort of just remembered as I was drawing that circle is, hey, what if I want to draw a circle that's only inches? Maybe it's 11 inches. There's no feet in it. How do I just draw something with inches when the default unit in Revit is the foot, right? It gets tricky. This is another one of my pet peeves about Revit. So I can click a midpoint, move in the direction I want to go. I can type 0 feet, 11 inches. Okay, so it's sort of an extra step. I don't really like that when I specifically think in inches a lot, because when I'm working in AutoCAD, it's just so easy to type 120 instead of 10 in the foot mark, right? So I like to think in inches, but in Revit, it's not that quick, right? It doesn't really benefit me very much. So if I wanted to create a wall, right, that is an inch increment, click, move in the direction I want to go, 0, 11 inches. There we go. There's my 11 inch wall. If I want to change that, of course, I click on it. Yep.
For me, it says element is too small on screen when I want to do 0 and then 11 inches.
For a circle?
Yeah.
Like the one I just did?
Yeah.
Let's try again. Let's do it together. So go to wall.
Zoom in a little more.
That could be it. It could be that. Let's try it again though. We'll click on the circle command, click a center point. I would zoom in a little bit. See how you're kind of getting it started? Oh, you know what might be happening? Does your wall type over here say generic 8-inch wall?
Yeah.
It does? Okay. Well, so now type 0, 11 and enter. It did it again? Okay. So what I'm thinking might be what's that? Oh, it did do it. Okay. So I was thinking, well, maybe sometimes what happens is if you get an object like this wall is 8 inches thick, if you get a wall that's maybe 2 feet thick, sometimes the thickness of the wall interferes with how large the object can or can't be. So sometimes there's that gets in the way. All right. I'm going to delete these little guys here. I'm going to go back to wall, wall here. And I'm going to talk about arc, and I'm going to show you fillet and then pick again. So I'm going to click on arc, and I don't use arc a ton, not because I don't like it, but because I don't generally find a huge occasion to use it in Revit. I at least maybe see the point of using it in AutoCAD sometimes, even though I don't like it, but I don't usually find the occasion to use it in Revit, right? This arc is probably the most commonly used. It's a start end radius. So I'm going to click to initiate the start point, click to initiate the end point, and then I can type in a radius like 15 foot, enter, right? So I get an arc that is 15 foot, has a 15 foot diameter, and I get the angle, the arc angle, I get the length here, and I get the angle off of the perpendicular, right? So how far it extends past 0, or 180 degrees. I think probably maybe if I were to say what is a common use for the arc, probably a common use for the arc would be connecting, maybe some elements that don't quite meet. So for example, I have this kind of L-shaped wall going on here. I could use an arc maybe to, give it a wedge-shaped look, right? That might be a good use of an arc, but very rare, honestly. I think a much more common usage of arc, which is a different command, I'm going to click on wall, would be the fillet, okay? And fillet is just like the command in AutoCAD, where it will allow you to create a rounded corner with 2 intersecting lines, right? It'll allow you to create, instead of a square corner like this, a rounded edge, okay? So I'm going to click on fillet. I'm going to click on my first line, my second line, and it starts to radius. And I could type in a radius if I want, or I could just click. So maybe I'll type in 5 foot. Ooh, it's not letting me. Okay, well, I guess we're going to have to eyeball it here and change it after the fact, revise it after the fact. Let's do 8 foot. Click on it, and I'm going to revise it. Maybe we want it 9 foot. Enter. Okay. So I think you'll have to get in that mindset. If I can't get it right the first time, it's okay in Revit. I will just go back and revise it after the fact. It's just kind of the way that it works, right? Sounds really funny, but the system's great. Okay, so that's our fillet command. The final command I want to show you more in depth today will be the pick lines. And generally, like I said, I'll start my workflow using pure drawing tools like the wall command with the line tool, or the wall command with rectangle, or the wall command with circle, right? Bless you. And then I'll come in after the fact if I need to generate walls off of those walls and use the pick tool, okay? So a perfect example of using the pick tool, let me just I'm going to draw a rectangle down here. Let's pretend we have a little building here. Okay, there's our building. And I want to generate some walls in this building, okay? The pick tool is very useful in allowing me to specify an offset, which I do have to do. If there's no offset, then the pick tool won't work. I'm going to specify an offset by clicking in there and typing 10 foot, enter. Hovering over an object, click. Hover, click. Hover, click, right? I could also move outside that building if I wanted to, click. Click. There's our hallway. See how easy that is, right? So this is very useful when, right, I'm drawing, maybe these rooms are all 10 feet. So I hover, click, hover, click, hover, click. What's so nice about this system, no cleaning up. Look at that, you AutoCAD users, right? Trim and extend lists. But that's what we're going to be using pick for, right? Now I'm going to draw maybe another wall right down the center here. Ooh, it's offsetting it. Oh, that's another thing. Sorry. Let me go to pick again. We'll come back to that. 10 foot, enter. I could come down here, create some intersections like that if I wanted to. We don't really know any modification commands yet, so I'm not gonna get too worried about that, but we could trim out these pieces in here. We could split them and trim them, and we could add some doors and start generating our building, okay? So that's what pick is going to be very useful for. And the workflow is you initiate a command, you click on pick, you specify an offset, okay? Now I'm going to show you one more thing with 5 feet with pick. I can offset individual lines like I have been doing, right? But if I wanted to, I could also offset a series of lines, meaning if I hover over a line and I tab, see how I pick that chain of walls? Click, hover, and it took me a couple tabs before I got there. Tab, click, circle, there we go. Tab, click, okay? Tab, click. Ooh, those overlap. Revit doesn't like that. Right? So I can click individual lines, or I can tab until I select a chain of lines and offset them all at once. Okay? Another way of drawing using the offset is in combination with some of the other drawing tools. So not only does pick use offset to create, you know, whatever specific drawing instance you need, I can click on line, I can give an offset of 10 foot, enter, and then I can use my line drawing. You see how it's offsetting that 10 feet as I draw? It's not on the right side of the line. I'm in a space bar. Space bar flips a lot of times in Revit. Sometimes it does other things, but space bar flips. Okay, so I trace the line, click, I keep going, and you notice it creates an offset with that line. Something else I want you to notice, you see I have a little endpoint snap happening there, right? Very familiar from AutoCAD. I do have object snaps that pop up here and there. I had the extension when I was lining things up, right? I have my endpoint snap happening here. If I hover down here to the middle of my wall, I get a midpoint snap, okay? I wish that object snaps were a little bit more easy in Revit. I don't feel like they pop up as quickly and accurately as in AutoCAD. They are accurate, but I feel like they're a little bit slower in Revit for whatever reason, right? They're magenta, so they're not the same colors in AutoCAD, but I do have midpoint, I have endpoint, I have intersection happening, vertical extension happening, okay? And I'll show you the other ones in a minute, but I'm still kind of drawing a line, but I have an offset that is happening as well, okay? And as we do some drawing, you'll really kind of get used to these things, right? It happens really quick. The hardest thing I think in Revit is all the settings and where are they, right? You're like, I know I can offset it, but where is it? I don't see it up here anywhere, right? Well, it doesn't show up till you hit wall. Oh, there it finally shows up, but it's not available in some of the commands, right? There it is, there it's available, there it's available. Okay, I type it in, I create the command, I hit escape and it's gone again, right? So you'll see that happen pretty frequently in Revit as well, where you have options for commands, but they only show up one time and then they go away, okay? All right, any questions so far? Not terrible, right? This is where I feel like you benefit from having AutoCAD before Revit, right? Because you generally know a lot of these commands and how they function. Okay. So we know how to draw using the wall command. We know how to draw with lines, rectangles, polygons, circles, arc, and pick. And that's what we're going to really focus on today. Okay. You notice that we have a, bless you, we have a modified toolbar here where we can specify an offset, and we can offset certain objects from other objects, right? I can use the pick to do that. I can use line. I can use rectangle if I wanted. Let's do that real quick. 5 foot, enter. Right, if I wanted to offset that, I could. If I wanted it to the inside, I could spacebar, 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 and I could flip it. Okay. I'm gonna hit undo, Control Z, because I want to get rid of that. I want to delete this triangle that's sort of intersecting with my rectangle. So I'm going to hover, tab, click, delete, right? That's one thing that I think beginning students with Revit always sort of get confused on is the tab, right? So if I hover, I'm not clicking, I'm hovering, tab. But the second I move away, if I move away, it disappears. Hover, tab, I have to click, and then perform my operation, okay? All right, so let's talk about our object snaps just a little bit more. I want to show you all of the object snaps you have available to you. Do temporary dimensions somewhat make sense, how they're going to work for you? Okay, they're somewhat useful. I thought I would use them a little bit more than I do. I appreciate that they're there. I do use them to revise stuff, but I thought I might use them a little bit more than I do, funny enough. All right, let's look at, and I'm going to delete some of these things up here. Let's look at, I'm going to move this real quick. We don't know how to move yet, but we will soon. Let's look at some of our object snaps, okay? So if I go to modify, no, not modify. It's under manage, I think, actually. Manage, yes. And I come down here to this little magnet. This is our snaps dialog box. So if I click on that, then I get this kind of odd looking dialog box. It looks more complicated than it is, but this is essentially sort of the same object snap dialog box that you see in AutoCAD, right? I have all the object snaps available: endpoint, midpoint, nearest, work plane, quadrants, intersection, center, perpendicular, tangent, and points, right? So I still have all of those object snaps available, and I can check and uncheck the ones I want to use. You'll notice that I have length, dimension, snap increments, right? So when I said you zoom in and I move my cursor to draw a wall, right, it went 1 foot 1, 1 foot 2, 1 foot 3, 1 foot 4, right? But when I zoomed out, it went, 1 foot 6, 2 foot, 2 foot 6, 3 foot, right? Those are the length, dimension, snap increments right there. And I have angular dimension snaps as well, right? I can turn all these on or off depending on if I like them or not, right? But this is kind of the master snap dialog box where I can turn things on and off, okay? Okay. So when I draw, those object snaps just kind of appear. There's no, well, there is a way to force it, but those are going to be the ones that kind of show up as I'm drawing. So when I click on architecture, wall, right, I get my extension, I get my nearest happening, see my nearest, and I get my endpoint, I get my midpoint in here somewhere, there it is, I get my perpendicular, that's perpendicular right here, vertical, I guess, right? So a lot of them are just showing up as I draw. That's not something that's, very different from AutoCAD. But essentially, object snaps are meant to help you draw and make it easier to draw, right? Help you get lines straight, help you be able to pick certain points on other objects, right? Meaning if I want to draw from the end point of here, I should be able to snap from the end point here and continue on, okay? All right. So how do I force an object snap, right? In AutoCAD, we had the shift, right click. I just want to use midpoint, right? We can do the same thing in Revit. If I click on wall, I'm not going to use shift, but if I just want to grab the midpoint of things, I can right click and I can choose snap override midpoint. And by doing that, you'll see only midpoints pop up for that one object. Click, or that one movement, sorry, click. And now you're going to start seeing the other object snaps pop up. If I right click again, midpoint, and only midpoints pop up. Where are some midpoints? Oh, all the way over there. Midpoint. See if we have any more. Click. Okay. This is another one of my things. I just feel like they're just not as easy as in AutoCAD, right? But we have some give and take, I guess. Revit can't be perfect. But there are drawing aids available. Okay. All right. Any questions on any of that so far? Not too bad, right?
You
There's
can't go midpoint in between each individual.
no. It's
in the whole.
It's like AutoCAD, where if you have a line segment and it's bisected by another line,
Load these and
you can cut them in half and you can trim them so that they become two separate. But we're not going to do that today. We'll do that next time. Okay. One other thing tonight, I'm going to talk about reference planes. Okay. And we're not going to be able to do a whole lot with reference planes today, but I want to show you how to draw them. I want to tell you what they are. And then when we learn modification commands next time, they're really going to help us with modification commands, essentially. Okay. So reference planes, if I go to architecture and I go all the way to the end here, reference planes, okay, I never use the icon for reference planes. I always just type RP, okay? That's a shortcut, way easier for me. But essentially, and this is something that AutoCAD somewhat has, but not, it doesn't work as well as this. Reference planes are kind of essentially like construction lines for AutoCAD or for Revit. They are planes that you can draw, you can view them, you can use them for reference and draw other items to them. You can use them to help you draw things, to set up a framework. And essentially they're throwaway geometry, right? They don't print. If you delete them, they're not attached to anything, okay? But they help you draw, all right? So I'm going to click on reference plane. I'm going to, you'll see we have two different ways we can create reference planes. I can use a line or I can pick. I'm going to draw a line this time. You'll notice we can also offset them, okay? So I'm going to do a 5-foot offset here. Click. You'll notice my green dashed reference plane is generating above that line. All right. So reference planes, they are green. They are dashed. They have a little bubble at the end here. Let me hit escape and click on it. They have a little bubble at the end here that will allow me to click and hold, drag it to make it longer, shorter. And you're also allowed to name them, okay? The general rule in any office I've ever worked at is if you have a reference plane and you don't name it, anybody can delete it, right? But if you have a reference plane and it's important, you need to give it a name, okay? And then if somebody wants to delete it, they have to ask, like, hey, who named this one, you know, middle of stair, and do you really need it, right? So that's kind of the general rule of thumb, a good rule of thumb with reference planes. These reference planes are kind of like 3D invisible planes in your object, in your model here. And I think I said this before, but they don't print, right? So you can view them all over your Revit model. You can have them for reference all over your Revit model. And when you go to print, they don't print, which is really nice.
How do you see them in 3D?
You don't usually view them in 3D, but I can, let me go back to architecture, show reference planes. This one is a level, this is a level reference plane, but this is how you're going to view them, essentially. It's a show work plane, but I don't ever use that, ever. They're usually meant more to be viewed in 2D to help you draw stuff than to be seen in 3D. All right, so let's look at our reference plane here, okay? I'm going to show you what a reference plane is used for, even though we don't know how to do it yet. I'm going to take this wall, and I want it to be, for example, I'm going to create a little dimension here, 5 feet from where it's at now. I want to move it, right? Or I don't really care if it's 5 feet, but I want I want this wall to go to there, okay? I can move that wall if I wanted, but I could also use a reference plane to help me align them. So reference planes are going to be useful for kind of creating an invisible framework and then drawing geometry and moving that geometry to that invisible network of reference planes, right? And you're probably thinking, well, why didn't I just draw the walls in the right place in the first time, right? But in Revit, it's easier said than done. Like I said, I'll usually get something on the drawing and then I have to get it correct, okay? So I can use a reference plane to align and move objects to where they need to be. We'll do this next time, okay? But it's very good. RP reference plane. Okay, maybe those walls go there. Maybe I have a grid that I want to kind of lay out. Click, escape, click, escape, click, escape. I'm drawing all these reference planes everywhere that don't print, right? And then I'm going to use a tool that we'll learn next time called align, A-L, align. And maybe I want to align my wall to there. Great. A-L, align, click, align that to there. A-L, I want to align that to there, right? So I'm creating a framework with my reference planes that I then align my geometry to, okay? You can mark points on things using reference planes. You always want to, you know, put a line down the middle of stairs so that if it gets moved or shifted, then you have a visual indicator, hey, something is not right, right? And we'll get into some other uses for reference planes, but this is kind of like the main thing that reference planes are used for in 2D drawing, at least in Revit, is helping you align objects, okay? Okay. Any questions about any drawing commands so far? Okay, we'll learn, so we've learned our basic drawing commands today. We'll learn modification commands next time, and levels, and then we will draw some. So likely that next class, so 2 classes away, right? I'll show you how to start drawing actual, like a house, right? So we know how to draw using lines and rectangles, and we know about reference planes and how to move and copy and rotate, right? How do we use them together to draw a house or to draw something, right? It's just, you know, we have to figure out how to use them together to create something. So we will do that pretty soon, right? I do want to show you something quickly here in 3D. If I pop into 3D, I did SD for shaded view. Look how nice all of those objects are, right? They're all 3D, of course. It's like a little prison, huh? Office prison. I know, right?
Did you say SB for shade?
SD, shade. Yep. So these and I'll start trying to verbalize all the shortcuts I use, right? But most, well, not most, a lot of the commands, like our visual style here, right? I was in a hidden line view, HL, I believe, HL. And I thought, hey, I want to be able to show what those look like in color. So I typed SD, shade, and they turn shaded view. Then I want to go back to hidden line view, HL, and they go back. Okay, I could do WF wireframe and see through them. HL, go back to hidden line if I wanted to. All right, that's all I had for tonight. You do have an assignment, okay? No laughing at the video. A couple of things didn't work the first time, so I just figured, it's good, right? So watch the video, follow along. It will take you 20 minutes to do, but I just want you to get used to the drawing tools. And then next time we'll have another video assignment that will likely take you another 20 minutes to do. And then I think the class after that we'll draw in class together, okay? Just to remind you, under modules here, this is where your video is. So if you click on it, oh, maybe not. Oh, I forgot to post it in there. It will be there. Sorry guys, it's on my computer in my office.